All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for day 3 of summer camp. We are halfway through the week. It's kind of crazy. It's already Wednesday. So just really excited for you all to be here to just talk about what we kind of covered this last week is talking about data literacy, hearing some student stories. And then yesterday, we really got a deep dive into Tableau prep and really that kind of like prepping data stage before you take your data into Tableau. So really enjoyed yesterday's conversation, hearing Carl's career story, the data school, and also just seeing Tableau Prep in action. And so today we have Mark Bradburn joining us today, and he's going to kind of walk us through his escape room demo that he built, which is kind of a fun and unique way to get familiar with the Tableau interface and tools. And so Mark Bradburn has spent 25 years working in analytics across a variety of industries, including companies like Harley Davidson, Sherwin-Williams. You can see his incredible visit license plate on his motorcycle, which I just think is like the most incredible like biopic ever. And so now he is working for Tableau as a solution engineer, helping customers to see and understand their data. So previously, he was a Tableau ambassador and part of that Tableau community and the co-leader of the Cleveland Tableau user group before joining Tableau. And so he's published over 300 visualizations to his Tableau public profile and is a huge believer in the Tableau community for raising your skill levels. And then a little fun fact is Mark is a musician, percussionist, and drummer, and has released 9 albums and EPs with various groups over the last 25 years. So he is really a jack of all trades. And so with that, I will stop sharing my screen. And Mark, you are feel free to take over and share your screen as well.
Okay, will do. Thank you for the intro. Um, it saves me a slide. Uh, so can you see my screen okay?
Yes, and I think your video is turned off if you
Oh,
just
let me fix that. There you go.
awesome.
All right. So yeah, all that stuff Bergen said is true. Um, so it kind of saves me talking about myself. But if you want to connect with me, if you got your phone handy, you can scan that QR code, and it'll take you to where you can find my LinkedIn, my Tableau public profile, and all that good stuff. Um, I generally live outside of Cleveland, Ohio. I actually rode the motorcycle this past weekend 1,000 miles down to Florida, where I'm hanging out with my parents. I'm actually at a co-working facility in their tiny little town, which I was impressed they had. But I'm excited to be here today with you, and hopefully this is a kind of a fun story and kind of shows you the art of what can be possible with Tableau. Um, so since it's like summer camp, I'll give you my educational background. I'm a two-time graduate of the University of Akron in Ohio. I have an associate's degree in computer programming, which I got in '97, and I went back to school 10 years later and got my BA in business and organizational communication in 2012. And my musical career was mentioned. I actually started college as a music education major. Um, but let's go ahead and dive into the escape room. So this all started back in 2018. I was working for a regional bank, Key Bank. Some of you might know it. It might be in your area. But I was in charge of all things Tableau. So I was doing administration, I was doing support, I was doing some development when needed, and I was doing training. And I had developed a couple of in-house trainings for developers, whether they're using desktop or if they're using the web authoring tool. But when I worked with the developers, I kept seeing what they were developing, and a lot of it was like big crosstab tables that look like Excel because that's what the users were used to. So I started to realize that there was a data literacy problem and a Tableau knowledge and adoption problem in general. So I was really trying to figure out how do we train users. Um, how do we engage and train them how to use Tableau and how to learn data visualization in general. Now, if you're talking about a small group, then you can kind of sit with them and train them on these things. But we had about 4,000 users. So classroom training really wasn't an option. Um, so I did what any seasoned IT professional would do in this situation. Whoops, too far. I started Googling. And luckily, the Tableau community, they share everything. So I felt fairly confident that I was going to be able to find something that would either be a solution to what I was trying to figure out, or I'd find something that would inspire me to create something that I could in turn share with the rest of the community. And eventually, I found this resource from Virginia Mensch. Ginny is now a good friend of mine, but she had created a digital escape room for her. She was working at a university of time. I think it was Appalachian State University, and it was a single page. A single page visualization that you just had to answer the questions down through. And I was like, well, that's kind of really cool. And then I realized that prior to joining KeyBank, was working for a company, and we actually did an escape room in like a team building exercise, and I loved it. I loved going from room to room and figuring out the puzzles, and then going back to the first room to really, escape from the room. So I was like, could I take this digital escape room idea and fashion it more like a traditional escape room? So that was the inspiration, the starting point for the whole thing. PowerPoint is picky today. Okay. So I had some goals in mind. Ultimately, I wanted to engage the users, to find something that would hook them so that they would do this on their own time. I didn't want it to be super time consuming, but I wanted it to be effective. And I really wanted to teach them how to fish. No small task, right? So through that, I was like, okay, well, what concepts do I need to teach them? So obviously we want to show them some common chart types, because we want to get away from showing them just big Excel files, basically. Filters and parameters were very common. People want to utilize tooltips to pass extra context. And then we want them to realize they can actually interact with these charts, and we want to encourage the developers to build those interactions in. So those were kind of the high-level concepts that I wanted to make sure that we were teaching. So I started to get down to work. I kind of, in my head, I was like, okay, I think 3 to 4 rooms will be good, and we'll use basically the visualizations as the answers to the puzzles, and we'll come up with questions. So I started building 4 dashboards using the Superstore sales data set. If you haven't experienced that yet, it's basically the data source that comes with every Tableau install. So once I had the dashboards figured out, I needed to figure out how to balance a challenge with having it being too hard and too frustrating. So figuring out, okay, if they did this and this and they can get this answer, making sure I mix it up with filters and parameters, making sure that I taught them how to reset parameters and filters, and really gamify the situation, and hopefully really hook them into what we were doing. So through the iteration, I started adding hints, because you can't just drop somebody on a dashboard and say, figure it out. So you've got to give them a push or a shove in a certain direction to say, okay, try this and see if that works. And through this and lots of testing, like I had a couple of people who I had talked to this idea about, and they really started to get into it. And so we were testing it and really fine tuning it so that it worked really, really well. And each iteration through this testing, we got closer and closer to what I figured out, in my head was like the final, like, finished solution, and cross the finish line. Now, all told, I probably spent 80 to 100 hours in pure development. That's beside from the testing and the initial development of the dashboards. This was just like figuring out the intricacies of turning things on and off based on answers, and how to show the hints and things like that. So a lot of time was spent kind of just honing the dashboard and the escape room in general. So when you launch the escape room, this is the first screen that you see. And it's where you start and where you end. So there's some basic instructions, talks about hints and the light bulb icons, tells them they have to find the 4 passwords. And when they finish, they come back here, they put the passwords in, then they escape. And from here, they would enter room number 1. So room number 1, I started with a basic map, and I had a set of bands or big ass numbers, as we call them in the community, or big angry numbers, depending on your comfort level with language. But these are the key indicators, key performance indicators of this fictional company. On the right side, I presented the 4 questions. They're all multiple choice, so it's not like they have to type anything in. I wanted to at least make it somewhat easy. And once they start going through it, they will get feedback down in this area here. This was the only place that I wasn't really happy with the escape room, simply for the fact that not quite right is not accurate, because at this point I think 2 of the 4 are correct, but it's basically trying to encourage them to keep going. So once they've answered the 4 questions, where it says not quite right, the password will appear. The initial idea was that they would jot the password down. In later versions, and I'll talk about those, I actually collect the passwords, and they're visible on the first screen so they can easily type them in. So this first screen, it was showing them filters, how to set and reset them. So there's a little catch where I'll ask for the year, and then the next question I'll ask for a different year. So they have to know to go back and change those things. And there was some interaction with the viz itself, selecting a state or hovering over and things like that. The second screen got a little bit more complex, a little more going on here. We just have one visible filter, which is for the year. And then the map in the upper right corner there is a legend, but it's also a filter as well. So on the hint, it says, hey, what does that map do? So just kind of that gentle nudge to experiment and try things out. But here they're also they're having to sort, having to select things, multiple things to filter the KPIs. So the challenge is starting to get a little bit tougher as we go deeper into the room. On the third screen, I introduce a new chart that they might not have seen, which is a bullet chart. These are great for actual to target type visualizations. So I wanted to introduce this concept as it was just a little bit different, from their typical bars and lines. So for this one, I introduced the first parameter, which is the sales target. So they had to adjust the target and do a bit of what if analysis. And again, it was filters and tooltips. So a lot of similar concepts, but in different visualizations, trying to get them to understand that these things exist everywhere and that you're not going to break anything when you touch something or click on something. The last screen was by far the most complex. Here they had to select multiple items on different visualizations to set the filters just right. You'll notice at the bottom, I haven't talked about it before, but there's a drop down here that says check your answers, and it's always hidden by default, but if they get stuck, I wanted to make sure they could get a way out, so they could get either a green check mark or a red X, whether they got the answer correct or not. But you can kind of see, here I've got some different things selected. I've got the Southeast selected. I've got furniture selected. I'm looking at the tooltip. I'm asking for different, what state is, the leader and things of that nature. So it really kind of finishes strong as far as, the complexity. So once I had finished all this and got this all tested, I published it to Tableau Public because I wanted to get some feedback from people outside the organization. And just as I was ready to launch internally to KeyBank's community, I got a job offer that I couldn't pass up. So this is me going to work for Tableau. This is a picture from boot camp in Seattle. And the escape room was still on Tableau Public at this point. I never really launched it internally at KeyBank. I didn't get a chance. But it was starting to gain in popularity, and people were continuing to test it and use it. And while I was in Seattle at boot camp, I got an email from the Tableau education team. And they're like, hey, we'd like to add the escape room to Tableau's e-learning. And I was like, yeah, I work for you now, so that's not going to be a problem. So this happened. So it got embedded in one of the learning paths for e-learning. And that happened basically right before COVID hit. And during the early days of the pandemic, Tableau gave e-learning to everybody for free. So the views continued to mount for the escape room, and it became a bit of a viral hit. At this point, it's nearly at 700,000 views. And that's just on the original. And when I say just the original, I got a lot of requests for localized versions because people just didn't know US geography. So I was like, okay. So I created a Latin American version, which is in Spanish. I created a European version that's in English and French. There's an African version as well as an Asia Pacific version. And the really cool thing is still today, being internal, I hear from customers who are using it internally for their training. And I love it. I love hearing that. It's probably the piece of work that I'm most proud of, because it's touched so many people on their journey here. Probably more people than I'll ever know, which is awesome. So to steal a meme format, this is how it started and this is how it's going. This small internal project where I was trying to train bank employees how to use Tableau turned into this global tool that helps people see and understand data around the world. So I'm going to take a few minutes and I want to actually pop inside the escape room, and just kind of show you a little bit of the inner workings of what it took to build this thing. And then probably after tomorrow's session with Bailey, it'll make more sense if you haven't looked at Tableau Desktop a lot. So, so a lot of this is just kind of floating. As I created the different regions, I actually put the links here because this is the one that I have pinned to my profile, and it's the one that's in e-learning. But I wanted to make sure that people could get to where they needed to be. So let's go inside room number 1, and I'm going to go in just to show like all of the different calculations and things that had to be created. So you can see here there's 16 questions that had to be created, and a lot of them are just placeholders. But you can see there's a question check. So, every question had a parameter and every parameter had to meet a certain value. And you'll see that I'm seeing question is equal to 99. Now the reason I'm doing that is because if I go down to one of the questions here, you can see that select an answer has a value of 0. The incorrect answers have a value of 1, 2, and 3, and then the correct answer has a value of 99. And the reason that I did that, if memory serves, let me find the congrats text. Oh no, that's just the text. Where's the? Is this it? Nope. I'm trying to find where the switch is. Let me look at the. So this is the finish screen. So either it says you haven't successfully completed it or you have. Key. Okay, there it is. So I look at yeah, I can. There we go. So I basically do an upper, like a conversion on the text to make sure that the password is correct. And don't cheat, but there's all the passwords so that they match. And if it does match, then they've succeeded in escaping the escape room. Go back to 100% here. There was one other place. I, I'm trying to remember why I went to 99, and I think at one point I was going to do math to figure out the key, and then I figured out a different way to do it. So it's an archive of the experimentation and getting all of this stuff right. But oh no, I did do the math. That's right. Okay, so secret word one. Let's start there. You can see how complex this started to get. So I was looking for the minimum value of 1, 2, 3, and 4. The parameter will only have one value. So if it's 99 four times, that equals 386 if or 396. So if the as they answer the questions, if it totals 396, then it gives you the password. If it's less than 3, I'm telling them to be sure to answer all the questions. If it's less than 9, I kind of give them a or I'll just give them a not quite right. So trying to like show them that yes, you're answering the questions and you're getting some feedback. But again, this is probably the part that I'm least happy with. That it hasn't quite hit where I've been thinking it needs to be. But you can obviously see there's a ton of calculations and parameters that went into making this like beast of a project work the way that it should. You can see I've got the hints, so it says don't forget to reset your filters after each question, and you can click on your map to select states. And then, like I said, you can actually show and hide the answer key if you got stuck. So that's really the escape room, kind of what was possible with Tableau. A few years back when I built this, it's kind of all over the place. It was really a cool project to work on, and what it's done is beyond my wildest dreams. But we've got 5 minutes, I think, before I got to hand it over to Maggie. So I'd love to field some questions if there's any questions about this or my career path or anything, really. I'm an open book.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Yeah. Feel free if anyone has any questions, please drop them in the chat. I just think this is such a unique and kind of interesting way to kind of get familiar with Tableau and learn the tools and the interface. And so I just think it's such a unique way to kind of make like Superstore fake sales data interactive, fun, and entertaining. So thank you, Mark, for creating such a cool visualization.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. Like I said, it's probably the piece of work I'm most proud of. So
I think a question came in, Mark, saying, do you mind sharing the actual Tableau workbook? I can't download the escape room in Tableau Public.
yeah, I leave it non-downloadable on purpose, mainly because it's part of e-learning now. I don't know if it's technically classed as proprietary information. But if you have questions about it, I can maybe peel off a screen or two, just as an example, and I could maybe send that out.
Someone said, awesome Biz. I got to use it last week and go Ohio. I love that. And I shared it in the chat too, but as you all are students, being part of the Tableau for Students program, you also get 1 year free of e-learning. So you're able to also jump into Mark's escape room via e-learning as well. Someone said, thank you, Mark. As an instructor, I'm now able to introduce Tableau to the kinesthetic learners. It's awesome.
Yeah, that was the main thing is like, how do you do hands-on training for consumption? And I couldn't think of another way to do it. So yeah, I've heard a lot of people, different companies use it for their onboarding program now. They just reference the Tableau public site, and yeah, it's been really cool to hear all those stories about how it's being used.
Amazing. Well, if there are any other questions for Mark, please feel free to post them in the chat. When I send out the notes and the on-demand video, I'll be sure to include all of Mark's social channels so you can connect with him, ask him questions, and reach out. But Mark, thank you again so much for joining us today and just kind of giving some deep dive insight into how you built your viz and just being part of the summer camp series. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely, my pleasure. And I threw the QR code back up here if anybody wants to scan it last minute here. I am super open. Like if people send me messages on Twitter or LinkedIn, I'm always there to answer questions or point people at resources. So please don't be shy.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
All right. And I will just share my screen quickly. All right. Can everyone see this okay? Perfect. Well, I'm excited to bring another student to our summer camp series. I'm really excited to welcome Maggie to really just share her education and career story. So she became part of the Tableau community via our Tableau student ambassadors, which I'm sure she'll dive into. But to just plug that a little bit, our student ambassador applications are open right now, and today is actually the last day to apply for our kind of next cohort of student ambassadors. And so the goal of student ambassadors are to really be a Tableau evangelist on campus. So working with instructors and university admins, conducting workshops on campus, and running social media campaigns as well. So as I'm sure Maggie will talk about, it's a great just experience as a student and a great opportunity to get connected to the Tableau community. And so with that, Maggie, I have your slides up here, but if you want to share your screen, I'm happy to do that as well.
No, if you want to share them, that's fine with me.
Perfect.
Yeah, I can start. Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie. I am currently finishing up my grad degree in business computer science. If you want to go to the next slide, Bergen, kind of how I wanted to build it, I wanted to start off talking to you guys about my personal data story. So how did I get involved? What was my background? How did I get where I am right now? And then kind of dive into what the ambassadorship enabled me, what it meant for me, how it impacted my life, and also what it is really about. And then I also have a couple advices that I want to give you becoming part of the community, upskilling your skills in that kind of area. And then I left a couple minutes at the end for any kind of question that you guys come up with. I'm happy to answer anything really. But yeah, so starting with my story, Bergen, if you want to switch over, I have a degree in business and management. So I have no data background when it came to my undergrad degree. But within my undergrad, part of studying business, and by the way, I studied in Austria, so I did all of this not in the US. I moved to the US 3 years ago, but my degree in business and management focused heavily on areas of business like marketing, finance, but then I had math classes about probability and additional 2 statistics classes that were using SPSS. And I found love for data. Like I took these statistics classes and I knew like, I don't want to do marketing. I don't want to do finance, which I thought I initially wanted to do with my life. I decided I wanted to go into data. So not having a data background is not the biggest issue. It really, what background you have should not determine the job you have in the long run, because when we're 18, 19 years old, honestly, we don't know. So in the last 2 semesters, I was part of a University of Applied Science, meaning that part of your degree is actually to intern with a company, which for me, that was BMW in Munich, Germany. And the internship initially was focused on marketing and public relations, but at the same time, I wrote my undergrad thesis about the KPIs of social media in the automotive industry. So it kind of gave that already a more data twist to it, as well as later I applied for an additional internship within the BMW umbrella in South Carolina, in the US. And that internship was actually focused on talent management first, but I was able to partner with the IT department to focus the training that we were giving people on data related programs such as Tableau. And as an intern, I was lucky enough to participate those trainings. So that was when I first started being involved and being trained kind of in using Tableau. But back then, my Tableau skills were very basic. So that's when I moved kind of my trainings and purposes and everything there towards Tableau. And then I upskilled. So my internship ended, and then I was like, well, now I need to find a job. And I knew I wanted my job to be within data. I wanted to be an analyst. I wanted to work in business intelligence. I had, with all the internships that I did in my life, I had around 2 years of experience, not necessarily in that field right there, but I had a pretty good background. So what I did then is I started LinkedIn classes. I started Udemy classes. I did Coursera classes. I did everything I could get my hands on to get some kind of certificate underneath my belt. Because what I then did is I applied for jobs that were outside of my area of experience. So when I first applied, the job that I have now didn't exist at Playfair. They actually only hired for senior management, which was 3 to 5 years of experience. But I love the company, so I was like, well, I really want to do this. Maybe they'll still take me. So they created an entry-level job for me, which I started as a visual analytics associate. And since then, I just keep working really, really hard on my skills. I kept working on my data engineering skills. I kept working on my Tableau skills. And pretty much around this time last year, I applied to become a student ambassador because in 2019, while already working full time, I started my grad degree as well. So I was still qualified as a student, still do to this day, finishing up right now. But bringing in that student ambassador with Tableau just helped me a lot in upskilling again, getting more exposure to the data fam outside of my own team, and just getting more easily introduced into the whole data community. And that actually brings me to my next point, the ambassadorship itself. So for the ambassadorship, when you first kick this ambassadorship off, we get like a boot camp that explains everything. You have tasks you have to fulfill as being part of the ambassadorship. So for me, because I study online, I wasn't able to go in campus or on the campus directly. So what I did is I reached out to universities close to me over where I live now, because I'm in Orlando. So I reached out to UCF, I reached out to Seminole State. I reached out to my teams and their alumni universities to see if we can partner with them and kind of get their students more engaged with Tableau, which ended up in a great relationship with DePaul University in Chicago. So I spoke at Tableau user groups. I created workshops for those students and universities. I worked with them and had some really good relationships with a couple of students there to judge their Viz competitions or speak at a panel to just get students involved and get them interested in data, because it's such a great career, but I think it's not communicated enough. And a lot of the times there's this big barrier of entry where we think we need a huge mathematical background or a huge background in statistics, which I don't think that's true. I think technology makes it so much easier for us. But within all of that ambassador year, and within working with all those students and communities, I think the biggest aspect of the ambassadorship that I would like to highlight is general community outside of the universities. in terms of access to the data fam and the ambassadors and the visionaries. For me, having that Slack channel and see what's going on in those people's lives that I admire so much was extremely inspiring, and to a point inspiring where I created an initiative where people scheduled time with me to talk about their career, or where people scheduled time with me to ask, hi, how can I upskill within Tableau, and I would just talk to them of what I did. Another big thing is like you get the first ins and outs of any new Tableau feature. You get the first ins and outs of any community events that are going on, and you can sign up for them immediately. So really, the ambassadorship has had an impact for me to be just welcomed in that whole data fam, welcomed into a place where I feel like I belong. So that has been really great. And I was able to attend Tableau conference this year in Las Vegas, which kind of was for me like a fangirl moment. I just stood in front of all those visionaries that I have been watching for the last 2 years of my life. And I'm like, hi, this is me. I'm part of this now. The other things to highlight as well, we get resources to upskill, of course, through Tableau, through the ambassadorship, being students. So I was able to use those to get my Tableau certificate, which the Tableau team also sponsored. So I'm officially certified, which not only helped me like better understand Tableau, but it also helped my career. Like it added credibility of what I do as a consultant, it added credibility of what I do in my job. And then last but not least, really important, we did get some swag, which I own like 10 data fam t-shirts. We have a huge competition within our team at work of who has the nicest data swag. So I got some ins and outs there. Bergen, if you want to switch over, I do want to cover some of my biggest advices that have helped me tremendously in the last year and a half that I have actively been working with Tableau, with data. So to first one, if you want to switch, I highly recommend anybody who does not have it yet to create a Tableau public profile. And I say this because we're students. We don't come with 5, 6, 7 years of work experience that a lot of the hiring managers are looking for. And even if you get to that point where you can finally talk to the hiring manager and you can kind of convince them of what you are capable of, you need to go over the hurdle of a hiring manager or over the hurdle of HR. And HR might not have the technical knowledge or the data knowledge in general that it takes to understand of how much experience you need to qualify for a job. So having your Tableau public profile as a backbone of what you guys are capable of is immense. Like it is so beneficial. Every single time that I was involved in a hiring process of a new team member, we asked for their Tableau public. And I also need to say, I published everything on Tableau public. I did an Udemy class and that dashboard ended up on Tableau public. It's terrible, but it's still my journey. So I kept it there. It's still up there if you want to check it out. I did not publish 300 and something visit yet, like Mark. I'm at 9, but I'm working on it. For my second advice, if you want to switch, I am a huge fan of the business dashboards on Tableau public. For a specific reason, I know on Tableau public, there's a lot of stuff that can be quite intimidating in terms of the viz they chose, the graphic design they do. But for me, on a job basis, what has been most helpful is business dashboards, because that's what I do. Like I analyze finance, I analyze automotive data, I still need my basic charts. So what I like to do is I like to pick and choose those business dashboards, and I can download them and I can re-engineer them. And I mean, a lot of these are just great. They're great not only as inspiration of when you guys do your own dashboards, but they're great to see what is best practice out there, and how a good business dashboard should look like. My third one is actually something that might not be intuitive, but I would go ahead and learn some kind of wireframing prototyping. And if that is PowerPoint, that is totally fine. But we have seen kind of a trend towards a UX UI design perspective within Tableau. meaning that your dashboards are so interactive and so dynamic to the customer's choosing or the user's kind of own story that now, if they're not intuitive, a lot of the functionality gets lost. So what I use is Figma, and I have not learned this at school. I have not learned this anywhere else. This is me trying to figure out my life. Um, Figma is free, so there's no cost associated with it. But where I start is I write down my idea bank. I write down what I have from the data set. I kind of start building out containers of where I want things to live, and then I transform it into Tableau. And this is incredibly helpful if you start with a vision, but you don't know yet how it's going to turn out. So my first vision, I wanted to create a sample superstore return analysis because I haven't seen that one. And my first vision ended up being very different to my final result, as you can see. But it kind of went through my whole process of wireframing. It went through a whole process of getting feedback from my team on like a personal project as well. And then I published this on Tableau Public. In addition, and it adds into my advice 4, I have asked for feedback. Well, okay, I'm switching advice 4 and 5. If you want to switch over to 5 real quick, because that kind of is related. I have asked for feedback on LinkedIn from anybody in the community, really, to give me feedback on my dashboard. And now, don't get me wrong, this is super scary. Like, you have spent hours and hours and hours of engineering this, and then random people come in and kind of give their crap about your dashboard. But honestly, that has been one of the most rewarding experiences, because not only did really, really high management people from very reputable companies tell me my dashboard was good, but they also gave me very constructive feedback while still being respectful. And I have learned a lot by just putting myself out there and asking for feedback. And I know this is really scary. It's not something that comes very natural to me personally, but I think making yourself vulnerable in that way that you are able to ask for that feedback will benefit you personally as well as your skills tremendously. And then I'll go back to advice 4. I have found that the Tableau visionaries and the Tableau ambassadors are extremely helpful when it comes to like creating connections. So I connected with all of them on LinkedIn. I finally set up a Twitter after Tableau conference because I found out that's where all the data people are. And really just follow them, follow their stories, their blogs, their advices that they put out there, because they have been doing this for a while. A lot of them made it their vision, just as I did, to just give back to the community and share knowledge and not make you re-engineer everything. So really, this is a community that is all about giving. So use it. And I think that was it for my advices. I linked my stuff as well. If you have any questions, feel free to ask right away.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for just kind of taking the time to share your journey and your story. I love hearing, I think, all the speakers that have been with us this week, just how their educational journey wasn't initially in like data analytics, but there was so much passion and drive that it's just so amazing to see that's all where we ended up. So if anyone has any questions for Maggie or Mark, they're both still on the call, so feel free to just post them in the chat. But I will include all of their social channels, the Figma link, and then training video that Mark also shared in the chat. And I'll also include the student ambassador links as well.
Yeah, and I'll just echo a couple of Maggie's points. It was excellent. But yeah, never delete anything from your Tableau public profile. If you scroll all the way down on mine, you will see some hot garbage from like October of 2016 when I first started publishing a Tableau public. And through the involvement in the community and different projects and all the feedback from the ambassadors and the visionaries, my skills improved. So yeah, it's such a valuable resource getting involved with the community from a learning perspective. So yeah, bravo. Good stuff.
Yeah, I feel like I can only echo that. I feel like with the community, you can just see of how much impact it has. I mean, for one of the points where I asked for feedback on my dashboard, the vice president of business intelligence of Bank of America commented. I'm like, that is huge. I'm Joe Schmo in Orlando, Florida, and the VP of business intelligence is commenting on my post.
That's incredible. I would be so nervous though.
Yes, I was terrified posting that.
Amazing. Well, I haven't seen any other questions in the chat. So again, please feel free to reach out to our amazing speakers. Thank you again so much for joining us today on day 3. To just jump in for day 4 and what's next, we're going to be doing a deep hands-on training tomorrow. So all of you will be in the Tableau desktop tool and kind of following one of our lead solution engineers of walking through building your own dashboard. So I have included the kind of package up workbook that Bailey has sent along to me via that link. So before the training tomorrow, please make sure that you have that workbook downloaded. I'll also include that in the follow-up email later today to make sure you have it. But with that, thank you all so much for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. I see a question saying, can the workbook be opened in Tableau Public? Yes, I believe so. I think I also have, it is linked on Tableau Public, so I'll be sure to send that as well.
Yeah, as long as it's downloaded from Tableau Public, it should be able to be opened in Tableau Public.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone.
All right.
Have a great rest of your day.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.